come to regret the denunciation earlier this year of an utterly evil, capricious, mean-minded and stupid God?
No, not in the least. Because you see, I don't believe in God. This was the basic premise on which the question that an Irish journalist asked me. He said, "Well, if you're wrong, Mr. Fry, if you're wrong, and there is a God, what would you say to him?" So the whole thing is a sort of premise on a premise. It's a supposition. It's a hypothetical, as they say in America.
It was, of course, but he did also say, if you meet him at the pearly gates.
That's what I mean.
We are talking about a Christian God.
If you meet someone that you don't believe exists, what would you say? Well, I would say, how dare you?
For those who didn't see it, tell us how you came to conceive of an evil God, a mean-minded God.
I didn't come to conceive of one. I'm talking about the universe as I see it.
Yes.
I'm just saying, if there is a loving God, how come children get bone cancer? Answer me that. It's that simple. It's not a game. I'm not trying to be funny. It's just, well, how can you begin to say there is a loving God and give children bone cancer? So they howl and scream in agony and die. Or because I want them in heaven. That's a ridiculous nonsense. That can't be true. It just can't be true. So there is a lot of thinking to be done. And I'm not undermining the thinking that serious theologians do and the branch of scholarship that they embark on to try and justify pain and evil in the world. And so I made the mistake in the modern world, if you like, of saying what I thought. And one of the biggest errors that you can commit in our times is to be honest if asked a question.
I was honest. More on that in a minute, because honesty can get you into trouble across a range of things.
Especially, oddly enough, it gets you into trouble with moral, religious people.
Well, it did on Twitter, didn't it? There was a viral explosion on Twitter.
Oh, it was mostly favourable by a huge amount. It was favourable because I think that's an obvious question. It's the simplest question we all ask about religion. There's the obvious prime one, which is what's actually known as the prime mover argument in religion, which is if there's a universe, who made it? There must be a first cause. And then any child can say, well, then if it's God, who made God? And so on. These are simple questions, but they're beautiful. Like all the best questions in intellectual life, physics and other things, they're very, very simple. And an extremely simple one, if you're told God loves you and loves the world and loves everybody, is why does he cause such appalling, or allow such appalling pain? And 6th century BC philosophers who said if God doesn't allow it, then he isn't all powerful. If it just happens without his permission, then he's not all powerful.
I'll come to the problem of pain, as it's called in a moment.
C.S. Lewis
wrote about this quite a bit, but the Christian backlash earlier this year, although it was outweighed by non-believers, got so bad that the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, in an interview had to weigh in on your favour.
Yes, because he's a decent, he's a thinking man. He's a very intelligent man. And I think if there were a God, one of the things he would want us all to do as much as possible is for us to use this extraordinary instrument he's given man more than any other creature, and that is his ability to reason. His reason deductively, inductively, and to try and understand and embrace the real complexities of reality. What he would not want us to do is to abandon our intelligence and just shout and scream and hiss and throw petrol bombs, or the verbal equivalent of petrol bombs, on Twitter. Stephen Jay Gould, the zoologist, paleontologist, proposed, I think partly because he was from quite a religious background, he proposed a sort of ceasefire in the war between reason and religion. And it's called nom, which is a word people use to describe delicious food. But it stands for non-overlapping magisteria. And he takes it, there are these two magisteria, magisterium being just a fancy word for a realm, a domain. So the two domains or realms or magisteria are science and religion. And his proposal was that science should deal with all the things science could deal with, and anything it couldn't, then religion could, and religion could deal with all the stuff that religion could, and anything it couldn't, could give to science, and then both sides would respectfully wave at each other across the chasm. This is difficult because obviously science makes discoveries that are empirically testable and reproducible, which fly in the face of any such ideas as transmigrations of souls or of any ideas of literal interpretations of the Bible.
Did you see Russell Brand's video, by the way?
Yes, I did, yeah.
So he makes a similar point, I guess, to Gould in a sense. He's saying there are certain things that science can't explain. But if you actually decide to believe in science, you have to accept the one big miracle that happened at the beginning, which is the Big Bang. And there's no question about what happened before it.
But that's exactly my point. What happened before God then? It's exactly the same argument. It's meaningless. It's basic logic collapses that point of Russell's straight away. Yes, listen, there's this rather feeble thing that people say is science doesn't know everything, and the assumption therefore is that you can then proceed as if what you've said is science knows nothing. All right. There isn't a scientist alive who claims that science knows everything. Any scientist would be incredibly disappointed if they felt that the end of science had come and that the last sum had been done and that the last apprehension about the universe had been made. I mean, look at the Large Hadron Collider. They're all terribly excited at the possibility that the Higgs boson field won't be discovered, won't be proven. And then the standard model will have to be totally rewritten, and that'll be something thrilling for scientists. If you want to hear something that a scientist usually says, it's "I don't know," because that's basically the tool of science is to take your ignorance and to try and find out. It's that simple. The pleasure of finding things out, as Richard Feynman called it. Now, as humans, we don't spend our time, unless we are scientists 24 hours a day, just finding things out. We live, we love, we make mistakes, we wonder why this happens to us in a metaphysical, emotional, moral, social, sexual way. We have all kinds of worries and fears and disturbing thoughts about life in the universe, and science can't even begin to cover them, and no scientist would claim that it does. But that doesn't mean that Genesis is true. That doesn't mean that Sunni Muslims are right to blow up Shiite Muslims. It doesn't mean that that Hindus are right to blow up Muslims in India. None of that follows from the basis that science doesn't know everything. Science doesn't know everything, therefore I'm going to ram my religion down your throat and tell these women what to wear in public and whether or not they can go to school. How does that make sense?
Let's go back to the more cerebral side of the argument that emerged earlier this year, and it did go back to C.S. Lewis and the problem of pain, and the question arose, would you prefer to live in a world where an all-powerful God intervened in everything to stop pain and stop suffering? Because the C.S. Lewis argument is that if there is a God, it wouldn't be an all-powerful God that intervened at every moment, otherwise we'd have no free will.
Yes, that's the old argument, absolutely. And the free will is usually given as... but then let's conceive of a possibility that there is a God before a universe was created who had the ability to build any kind of universe he wanted. So it wouldn't... pain or non-pain wouldn't be an issue. You might as well say, well, there's another universe that exists in which there's this thing called blim, which makes your eyes boil. And God has decided that you should have blim and your eyes boil, but if you pray, it will go away. Well, why? Why would you make blim? Why would you make pain? It's not as if God not making pain, there's a universe without pain, man sits there saying, this God hasn't even given us pain, so we have the option of not having it. Because we wouldn't know what pain was. Why would we conceive of it? The Greeks quite rightly posited the idea of a golden age. And they had a much better apprehension of why the universe is the way it is, why the world the way it is that there was a golden age, but our Christ, the Greek Christ, was the Titan Prometheus, who loved man so much he wanted to give man divine spark. So he took fire from heaven, from Hephaestus' forge, and he gave it to man. And Zeus was so furious, he took Prometheus, chained him to the Caucasus Mountains, and because Prometheus was an immortal Titan, he had his liver torn out every single day, was restored the next day, torn out, because he died, he suffered for man. And that was the Greeks' idea, that essentially if there is a God, somehow they're angry that we've been given an equality to them. We've been given their divine fire.
This year's controversy wasn't the first time you had a run-in with the religious, if we could say this. I mean, a couple of years ago, you found yourself having to write a blog saying, I am not an Islamophobe. Tell us why you wrote that.
I wrote it because I was afraid, so I wasn't an Islamophobe. It's that simple, if I'm honest, isn't it? But what depends what you mean by phobe. Phobos is fear in Greek. So yeah, I'm afraid of, not all, of course I'm not afraid of all Islamic people. I'm a Christianophobe. I'm afraid of all kinds of people, not automatically, but I'm afraid of a certain kind of fundamentalist, violent intolerance, ignorance. I'm afraid of it.
Well, the kind of intolerance you would say, and you wrote another blog about this, that would cause a fanatic to murder a cartoonist in Paris.
Or a blogger in Bangladesh. It's recently happened. Secular blogger. And yeah, I'm afraid of those things. Who wouldn't be? But of course, I have no quarrel, and I would hate to see an increase of any kind of intolerance or bigotry towards people going about their lives following their own devotional careers and aims. I mean, the piety and belief of other people is not my business. I'm not here to persuade people not to believe in God. I'm absolutely not. I happen not to, and sometimes I'm asked to justify it as if it's an extraordinary thing not to believe in God. So I do, and sometimes I do so passionately. But what I absolutely will not do is tell anybody to believe me. It's not, why should they? They can listen to me if they want. But if they want to believe in their God, they want to kneel at their altar and bow in the direction of their God, then they should have absolutely every right to. The only thing I have a quarrel with is if some elements of that institutional religion or personal, people have taken that religion to the extent of performing violence and burning gay people and any of the other horrors that are taking place around the world.
Last week on this program, we convened a dialogue between the atheist Sam Harris and the reformed Islamist Maajid Nawaz. They both made the same point, that the intellectual left has suppressed open debate about Islam. It seems that you came to the same conclusion.
Yes, I don't like what's happened to the left. I don't like the fact that the left has become sort of so judgmental and so closed to reason and to, in a sense, to liberal values. And if I belong to any tradition, it is to that started by perhaps Bertrand Russell, that of a sort of liberal, secular, doubting. Bertrand Russell was way ahead of anybody else in terms of rights for women and so on. But he was culturally conservative in the sense that he believed in the value of education and reason, open reason that is not questioned. And I sometimes wonder that some of the left are not becoming clerical in their attitudes.
There's a wonderful line in the X-Files, which is not my favorite TV show, but nevertheless, which is what Fox Mulder always says: we want to believe.
Yes,
we want to believe.
Yes.
We all want to believe things. We're hardwired to believe in things, and that is not itself necessarily bad. I think there's a great indirect description of religion. You said old people don't know. So old people, people often become more religious as they get older. You said old people don't know that in the world today there's no one there. They don't know that the Bible is a customer service announcement, and that purgatory is where St. Peter puts you on hold and sends you into a self-contained, menu-driven loop of tone button-operated eternity to the sound of Vivaldi's Spring.
That was actually...
I don't know if isn't it fun to remember that you actually wrote these things?
Well, there is, of course, an impulse. Whenever we don't understand a force, in the earliest days it would be the moon and the sun, we would give it an agency, and the name we give such agencies is a god.
Yes.
So there was a moon god and the sun god, and there was a god of pushing leaves out of branches of trees. Any force, any motion that we don't understand. And then, of course, force and motion, and the understanding of force and motion is your business, and is the business that Galileo and Newton were famous for, literally, the moving of things.
Sure.
The prima mobile, the prime mover is the key to it.
It's realizing emotion. You hit it. You see, be a great physics student, because because one of the things when I talk about introductory physics is the difference between Galileo and Aristotle is Aristotle thought position was important.
Yeah.
Galileo realized it was motion. And that
right.
simple realization was the creation of modern physics.
Yes. And what is the agency behind that movement? And of course, if you don't know and you're not prepared to do the hard thinking that science involves, or you choose to disbelieve science for some weird reason, you give that agency to a deity.
Yes. I prefer to. Well, I think
these days a single deity, unfortunately, but it was more fun when it was.
It was much more fun. There were more, and they're much nicer when there's a lot of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you. But it's more than that. I think it's maybe I'm more pejorative. That it's where you stop working. It's when you say, I don't want to think about this anymore, so I'll just it's God.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more hesitant than you, I think, or our mutual departed friend Christopher Hitchens. I cut more slack to the individually pious and devout individuals in the world. I have no wish to offend them or to
I don't think
make
he
them...
did either, actually.
No, I don't think he did particularly. You know, and I always think of Flaubert. You know, his Trois Contes, the three stories of Flaubert. There's one called Le Coeur Simple, the Simple Heart, and it's this woman, Felicity, she's called, which I think is an ironic title, Happiness. She's a hard-working maid, bonne, and she sits in front of a stained glass window and looks at it. And Flaubert's contempt for the cardinals and the prefecture of cardinals and the panoply and hierarchy of the church that keeps her on her knees is profound. But his love and sympathy for her on her knees being awed by the color and the excitement and the possibility of what religion offers is deep. And I understand that. You know, I think I don't want to shake people and say, don't you stare at that stained glass window, don't sing those hymns, how dare you? It's not my business. I have to speak as I find when it comes to the truth behind it, which is important.
But the sense of wonder is worth celebrating. And I guess my always point about religion is that there are many positive things, as we both agree. But the question is, can you achieve those positive things without the negative ones?
And Richard Feynman did wonderful. You remember talking about the flower when having an argument with an artist saying, I find the flower more beautiful than you do. You just, you sort of find it beautiful. Then you go into all its stamens and its atoms. And Richard Feynman said, well, no, but don't you see? I get the beauty of the flower as the colors and the aesthetic shape, but I also get the beauty of the symmetry inside its cells. I get the symmetry of its genes. I get the beauty of its transport systems and its chemical reactions and its factory, the whole thing. I get more, not
exactly.
less.
In fact, you see, I have Feynman written here. Right now, it's amazing. We're
on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally,
well, but interestingly enough, I also had Feynman in the sense of you said something independently that was almost exactly the same thing. I mean, Feynman talked about the flower, talked about rainbow. You said a rainbow isn't less beautiful because I understand how it works, right? And you said rationalizing a sunset doesn't make it any less beautiful. You said it in the hippopotamus.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
and which is a wonderful. I like the book and I like the movie. Because it was a wonderful way of addressing this fact that we want to believe. And how can you gently show people that they're really misinterpreting the world, that there's actually a different explanation, which may be more illuminating, more useful in the long run, as it was in this case, to learn about the nature of the two young men.
Absolutely.
And to learn the reality. That's the point. It's not that it's not a beautiful way of seeing the world, but what ultimately leads you to useful actions versus irrational actions. And that's my problem.
A greater depth of engagement in the world around you. And what we really have an objection to, of course, are the power wielders of it, is the priestly caste that decides it has knowledge that is special, that has revealed knowledge that cannot be questioned, that is a truth that doesn't need to be proven, and that will set you free, and that without it you are in some way damned. And the people who are most likely to be controlled by that are the most vulnerable, are the poorest, are those with the least education, and who are denied any sense of education or an option of looking into the true depth and wonder of the world, because it seems religion wants to count its souls, and there, we know what the dangers are.
There's those dangers, but and those are the obvious ones, I guess. But there are the more subtle ones, and I think that in some sense, and again, I had this debate with Chomsky at one point, who said to me early on, I don't care what people think, it's what they do. The problem is there's an intimate relationship between what people think and what they do, and that's the problem of religion, it seems to me, is not that, I find not that it's silly, and it's that accepting that silliness causes people to do irrational and sometimes evil actions. So there's that part, but then going to Hitchens, there's a quote which I thought was from Hitchens, but like many things, it wasn't, I suppose. But where I heard him say, you know, we're created sick and commanded to be well. I've learned since then it was a 16th century quote from a name Fouquier-Geville. Maybe you know the pronunciation. He said, "We are created sick but commanded to be sound." I learned that it came from that. So, but I first learned it from Christopher. This once more,
this
the
original
sense
sin idea.
We have to be ashamed of ourselves.
Yes,
this sense of shame, which is so ingrained in religion, is in my mind one of the, well, especially in the Judeo-Christian religion, but particularly Christian, that is one of the more insidious and evil aspects.
We have to square the circle of that. We accept the preposterous nature, or at least we at least agree on that. The original sin idea, the thought that we're supposed to believe that we're guilty, we should be ashamed. But on the other hand, we also have spoken of, without using his name yet, Plato, or the idea that there is a perfection out there that we have not attained, that we cannot attain. And that Browning quotation about that a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for, pushing forward of knowing that we are imperfect. By definition, perfection is that which cannot be achieved, but that there are paradigms of perfection. There is a thing called truth, and there is a thing called a shining moral, ethical life that we gesture towards, but we haven't got it. We are imperfect, but the imperfection is not a stain on us from birth. It's merely that we're given a sense of the ineffable and the inexpressible in ourselves, a pattern of something beyond.
There is a particular kind of magic in the way Stephen Fry talks about unbelief. And it's not the clinical precision of a philosopher or the confrontational zeal of a debater. It's something far more captivating, and perhaps it's his accent. Either way, Fry, with his velvet voice and razor-sharp wit, delivers atheism not as a dry conclusion, but as a moral and aesthetic revolt to Catholicism throughout this video. Here in this video, when he speaks about religion and the Catholic Church, it's with the fury of a betrayed lover and the sorrow of someone who once longed for meaning in the divine but found only silence. Which is why it's no surprise that his atheism isn't just intellectual, it's deeply unapologetically human, man. Now, besides this instance, Fry's another famous dismantling of faith instance came in a 2015 interview on The Meaning of Life, where he was asked what he would say to God if he found himself at the pearly gates of heaven, and his answer was a masterpiece of moral outrage, man. How dare you, he said, how dare you create a world in which there is such misery? That is not our fault, it's not right, it's utterly evil. Within that answer, he went on to list bone cancer in children, parasitic diseases that usually blind the innocent, and the endless, needless suffering woven into existence. And if you've watched that clip, then you know this wasn't just an argument against God's existence, it was an indictment of the very idea of worship. If such a being does exist, Fry argues it wouldn't deserve our reverence, it would deserve contempt, and I agree with him 100%. And for me at least, this moment and answer basically crystallized Fry's role in modern atheism. He was the voice of the outraged humanist, the artist who looks at the universe's cruelty and refuses to make excuses for it. Unlike the new atheists who often framed disbelief as a triumph of reason, Fry's atheism is rooted in moral disgust, and you wouldn't blame him, man. He doesn't just reject the logic of religion, he's offended by its audacity, the gall of claiming love for a deity who presides over a world of suffering. But Fry's critique isn't just emotional, his intelligence is vast, spanning literature, history, and science, and he wields it like a scalpel, man. In multiple debates and essays, including the one you just watched, he points out the absurdities of biblical literalism, the historical atrocities justified by faith, and the psychological harm inflicted by the religious guilt, basically. And through it all, he does it with a charm that disarms where others might rant like Samaris. Fry criticizes with laughter. His humor makes the absurdity of dogma impossible to ignore. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video on Stephen Fry, man. This is actually the first video that I've done on the gentleman, so if you liked it, kindly let me know and I'll find another one. I'm sure a lot exists. Either way, thank you for joining me today. I hope I'll see you again the day after tomorrow with another video, man. Peace.